Indeed, you are listening to Paris Live with me, David Coffey, here on Radio France International.
Mon chéri, je t'en prie, ne me fais pas de peine, mon ami.
What the fuck, France?
Well, I'm glad he said it, not me, on the airwaves. I'm delighted to welcome live in the studio comedian Paul Taylor, who for the past few years has been trying to make sense, as we all have, of France's idiosyncrasies and kind of daily catch-22s to expats such as myself and yourself, Paul. It's great to have you in the studio
Yeah,
today.
thanks for having me.
Well, I mean, we've been trying to make sense of everything here with my life in Paris. I've been here for the last 20 years. I'm still trying to sort it out.
20? Wow.
20 years. And let's have a look at, well, first, you're a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
You've had your great success with the Canal Plus, WTF France is how we're going to refer to it from now on. Just in case there are any kids listening to us at this tender afternoon hour that we are broadcasting. But first, before we kind of go into the background of what you've been doing, recently,
yes,
you've just finished your stand-up show, #Franglais, that was running at the beginning of this month. I can see it here.
Yep.
For those who can see us on video streaming or who will see us online, that was at the beginning of January in the Casino de Paris up by the Place Clichy here in northern Paris. How did the run go for you?
It was great. Yeah, it was the 3 final shows. It's been so I've been doing the show for 3 years. I started in a little room with 50 people doing a bilingual show called Franglais, which initially I thought, oh, well, let's do a show in both languages and see what happens. It's a unique concept. Maybe I'll create my own audience because it's a unique thing. And luckily for me, it ended up going really well. So the final 3 shows were at the Casino de Paris, and now we're editing the video not from there. We filmed it at the end of my last run in Paris in March, and there'll be a video available somewhere, somehow, of the show.
No, indeed. I bought tickets to the show. I brought them actually here just to show you that I was meant to go and I couldn't because my wife had to go with my set because I had bloody bronchitis at the beginning of the month.
No.
On the Mercredi 2 Janvier. I was meant to be on the Wednesday.
Where's your doctor's note?
Don't worry, it's here in the building. It's here in the building. But I mean, you've mentioned now that you did try this 3 years ago in a smaller club with 50-50 French, 50 French, 50% English.
Yeah.
But to quote the great British comedian Alexei Sale, the one great thing about the British is that they know how to laugh at themselves. However, if you're billing something as 50% English, 50% French, my wife mentioned this here, said, well, the crowd this year was very French. And the French are not renowned for really laughing at themselves, are they? How have you managed to turn that around?
I get the question a lot because people, there's a stereotype that French people don't have a sense of humour, self-deprecating humour.
Sure, self-deprecating, indeed.
Which isn't true. It sounds big-headed, but if it's well done, it works. In the sense that, for me, well done is that I've lived here for 10 years. I speak great French, so there's a certain legitimacy around my act, rather than just being a whoever British person coming in and complaining about France. People would say, "Well, just go back to your country then." Whereas people know that I kind of have lived here for a while. So.
Well, that's it. I mean, these are all kind of favourites and classics from our childhood. Well, definitely mine, and they're classics like Fawlty Towers and Blackadder. Always kind of relied on the jingoistic kind of, oh well, this is Blighty and all those Johnny Foreigners, and yeah, it was perfect for the time. But you seem to manage to have sidestepped that with your show.
Well, I tried to when I started doing comedy here at the very beginning 6 years ago, when I was just doing 5-minute sets. Yeah. I was going on stage and making fun of the English, and it didn't get. It was only when I started making fun of the French that it started getting a good reaction. I'm like, oh, because they don't care about the English here. They just want to listen to people, whether it's good or bad. They want to listen to the people talk about them.
This brings me on actually to the subject of La Bise. I just met your wife there behind the. Well, what are we going to do? It has to be La Bise. Now, La Bise is, of course, it's how does one greet oneself, and this is one of my favorite pieces. And we just teased that a little earlier about a good old genuine rant, if you will, about what in the name of sweet zombie Jesus am I meant to do when I've just come off a plane here in Paris? How do I greet people? Because you've got men kissing men, you've got women kissing men, you've got women shaking hands with other people. You don't really know how it is. And as I said, I've been here 20 years, and that whole etiquette of La Bise, it takes decades to hone. Now, La Bise did, however, catch the eye of Canal Plus.
Yes.
And that then went on to create 34 episodes of WTF France, if
Yes.
we will call it that, online. And they were then commissioned. Was that the game changer for you?
Yeah, I think if I ever write an autobiography in 20 years, it'll be called "It All Started with a Kiss."
Yeah.
because that's honestly, that was the first. Up until then, I just quit my job 6 months before to do full-time comedy. I'd been doing comedy for a while, part-time, and we released this video, which was part of my stand-up show. Around La Bise, and so we released that video. In a week it got 1 million views. Canal Plus called me to say, let's make more of these styles of videos. I'm still working with them now on a documentary series now, which so I've done this. I'm on my 3rd project with Canal Plus now, so yeah, it really did all start from that one video.
And indeed, when I first saw WTF France, I was like, why has this never been done before? I mean, the wonderful thing about trying to get a handle on all things French is that you've no shortage of material. I mean, the only other people who may have nailed it as well as yourself are Flight of the Conchords.
Yes.
Now, I'd just like to play the clip here. This is one of my favorites. It's about trying. This is the most fundamental thing when you try and arrive in this place. It's trying to rent an apartment in France. And let's have a listen.
Nous sommes sur un superbe appartement de 500 mètres carrés avec vue sur la Tour Eiffel.
Number one of the first things you have to do as an adult is find a place to live, which in theory should be easy. You just pay the correct amount of rent each month and that's it, right? Wrong. It's actually easier to be a ninja warrior than it is to get a place to live in France. Because you need 7 different documents. A photocopy of your ID, a photocopy of your job contract, your last 3 pay slips, last year's tax returns, a bank account, a guarantor, and also 3 rent receipts. So let me get this straight. In order to get a place to live, I need to have proved that I already had a place to live. Well, I can't do that because I just fucking got here.
Well, that pretty much nails it. The daily paradox. The catch-22 of living in France to me. Now, here's one thing. Have you ever been able to sort out the following? Why do AZERTY keyboards exist?
I don't know. I think that's driven me crazy because I used to work at Apple.
Yeah.
So
my God.
it was a constant bother for me, the whole keyboard changing thing. I think it's because they must use those combination of letters more often here.
But I mean, it's not just something to be like. I mean, I had to bring these up as well, just to say, okay, look, why are bookbinders the wrong way around? I mean, when you have a bookbinder in an English format, it's there and then it's there like that. It's pretty simple. But in France, you have to turn the whole book around.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the DVDs are the same. And when me and my wife, we moved in together. She had her French DVDs and I had my English DVDs, and it didn't work because I'm OCD in that sense. I need things to look perfect. It just drove me crazy.
It's bringing that whole idea of a couple like IKEA crisis to a whole new level, where you're just going to have to reorganize the entire apartment. Indeed, so we've got AZERTY keyboards, don't know, and you work for Apple. Bookbinders, we still have to get to the bottom of that one. Why are commas used when denoting decimal points?
Yeah, the commas for decimal points, the space before the exclamation marks, and it's
just the French. Do the French do it better though, in your opinion? I mean, you are a Francophile. When push comes to shove, you still love the country. I mean,
definitely. I just love complaining about it because that's it's. I mean, I don't even think we've. Oh no, there is an English expression, but I forgot what it's called. Qui châtie bien aime bien, but it's in English. It's
those who tease better get on better. I don't know.
There's an English expression that means like if the more you love it, the more you make fun of it, or the more you kind of prod it.
Sure.
But yeah, it's
well, I mean, that's it. You have to kick what you know as well. I mean, but first, Paul, just tell us why you actually got into stand-up. Now, you said you were working for Apple. I mean, you obviously seem very comfortable on stage. But what really kind of pushed you, made you make that first leap forward, if you will?
I don't know. I think I was just seeing my life go by. I had a good job. I enjoyed what I was doing at Apple. I enjoyed the company and loved the people I work with. But it just seemed like it was after 3 years of being in France. I'd look back and I thought, wow, it's already been 3 years. It feels like it's been 3 months, and I just saw my life sort of
ebbing away.
Yeah, so I thought, well, let me try this stand-up thing and see what happens part-time. So I went on stage, did a couple of open mics like you do, and it was going well. And about 2.5 years later, I just thought, well, I don't have any really financial obligations. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a kid right now. Like, now's the time to quit and try this.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to regret it when I'm older.
And I mean, is there a generational aspect to maybe who your inspirations are? I mean, I come from the Bill Hicks generation. I mean, when I was growing up as a kid, I loved Richard Pryor and, of course, Eddie Murphy in the 80s because he was just so bloody irreverent and rude. But I mean, the 90s for me was like Bill Hicks was like the mind blower for me. Who's the guy who kind of ticked all your boxes when you were watching any kind of stand-up?
The first comedian that I really got into, the first two were Jack Dee and Lee Evans. And then as time went on, Michael McIntyre, when he kind of blew up, I really enjoyed his style of observational comedy. Now I look up to people like Bill Burr, who's an American, who's kind of similar vibe to me. He's just agitated about everything.
Has stick, will wave. He likes shaking it. He likes shaking things.
Yeah, there's a Welsh comedian as well called Rod Gilbert, who I enjoy. So as you said, like it depends on the generation. It's very.
So there is a generational thing. Now, the other thing, well, especially when you're on stand-up, I mean, even though your French is perfect, I mean, how is it to instantly react to heckles in still what is a second language? I mean, you must really have an arsenal there with your comebacks in French, or do you?
You know what? No, because French people and the French audience don't heckle. It's very...
Because they're the biggest râleur that I've ever encountered in my life, but they don't heckle a comedian on
no,
stage.
No, because stand-up doesn't really... It's not an art form in France yet. It's going to take some years. In the next 10 years, it's probably going to take off as an art form. But right now, there's no comedy clubs here. So you go to a theatre to watch stand-up. And French people, when they're used to going to a theatre, they used to just not taking part in the show. They sit there very, very patiently. Sometimes at comedy shows, they don't even laugh. They sit there and they laugh afterwards. And you're like, no, you can laugh. You're allowed to laugh.
I suppose it's an interesting thing. Because I went to see Norman, who was one of kind of the YouTube. He was a YouTube sensation from years ago. I mean, he's absolutely excellent. And I even show his YouTube things, especially about the electronic cigarette, where it's like the style of smoking a normal cigarette, you could just flick it away, but with an electronic cigarette, if you want to light, you need a USB key. It doesn't really have the same, kind of Gainsbourg gravitas. But I mean, how do French comics such as Norman look at you on stage? I'm sure there's quite a small community that you've met each other. I'm sure.
I've crossed paths with Norman a couple of times because he's more YouTube than stage. But we've crossed each other on a couple of clubs. I don't know. I feel like I'm in my own little box over here in the sense that French comedians, I think, that I started with 6 years ago, some of them are potentially not jealous, but they look at me and go, oh, he because he's English, he got the easy route. Like he managed to find his own thing very quickly and he's off. But I go back to comedy clubs and perform 10-minute slots now and again. I'm writing my new show now, so I'm going to start getting on stage again at small places. So yeah, we all get on well, and then behind closed doors, I don't know what happens, but I think, everyone in this business, what we try and do is we try and find our unique thing, and hopefully we get an audience.
And you find traction with that.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, if I'm right in saying your mum's Irish, your dad's English, and you've got an Irish passport, so you're not going to be queuing down at the prefecture on the 29th of March trying to make sure that you need a carte de séjour to stay in the country. But with you ripping the French kind of apart, and you say, picking them apart, with that kind of love, hate God, I've been here long enough kind of nature, has Brexit given them any grist to their mill? I don't know, be they your fans or your detractors, to just get their jab back at you?
A little bit. I'll see it now and again in comments and stuff, but I mean, in reality, French people don't care about Brexit. Most people I speak to here are just like, oh, is it not happened yet? And I'm like, no, it's very much not happened yet, and we don't know what's going on. But yeah, I think French people, I mean, it's that little joke about, when you say, oh, well, you're not in Europe anyway, little quick things like that, but it's because it's not much in the news here, really. It was when it started off, and now you hear about it once every 6 months.
Well, I suppose it's a kind of an abuff, and we have on a d'autres chats fouettés entre temps. That's it.
Exactly.
Now, so let me just let's have a quick recap. It was great to have you on the program. You have new projects that are on the boil. I believe with Canal Plus. You've also Stereo Trip.
Yeah, that's the main one that's going on right now. It's kind
of like a more. Am I right in saying it's a more Europe-wide kind of dissection of national picadillos and things like that?
Well, if the basic pitch was, I spent 2 years making fun of the French and their stereotypes. The idea was to do it with other countries, but I don't know them well enough to make fun of the stereotypes, so let's go and discover if they're real or not It's the stereotypes that we have. So it's a 6-part documentary series where we go to 6 different countries and find if the stereotypes that we have about those countries are true or not. And
am I right in saying that this is something that my wife did bring back from the gig that was up at Place Clichy, up at the casino, saying that she said what's very interesting is the perception of English fluency is totally subjective from country to country. Of course, when you go to Amsterdam, she was saying, you speak any English, and they're like kind of going little, and then you say, well, where's it? Well, actually, just go down the left, take a right, and then on the 5th of the roundabout, and then and you'll find an ATM.
Yeah.
And then you go to Spain, of course, and you say, just become por supuesto que sí, and then it was like, so where's the bank? And they're like, huh?
Exactly. Yeah. People in different in Europe, there's a different perception of different levels of English.
So, and that's definitely something that you've now been finding out. Okay, look, Paul Taylor, I wish you all the best in your future endeavours with Canal Plus and with the stand-up comedians, or the stand-up comics and the stand-up comedy shows, the stand-up shows, and maybe getting those French stand-up comics to actually kind of turn this art into a true art form here in France. Okay, my thanks there to Paul Taylor.
Merci beaucoup.